Hello and welcome to the CMIP Theatre here at NAB Show 2016. I'm your host and moderator, Will Garside, and with me I have a panel of experts to talk about innovation and the future of television. So, to introduce my panel from left to right, I have Miguel Silva from Viamont, Lou Shorts from Frankly, Simon Hogsborough from Extreme, Peter Elvidge from Globecast, and Kavi Maharaja from QuickPlay. Innovation is the lifeblood of our industry. NAB is a testament to what's possible in terms of technology. But it's not just bits and bytes and pieces of equipment. Innovation is business models and ideas and people, frankly. People create innovation. So I'm going to ask our panelists an opening question. What makes them excited about the broadcast industry? To Miguel, what have you seen that's hot and new here at NAB?
Well, so first of all, thanks for inviting us to speak here. I think you're right. Innovation isn't necessarily about technology. I mean, technology is one thing, but technology doesn't really drive innovation. I think the market drives innovation, and then technology tries to solve a problem, basically, that the market is coming out. And one of the things that we're really excited about is we're believing that we're finally getting the industry is finally getting at a stage where OTT is no longer about new television, if you will. Television is television, right? It's in different screens. It's workflows basically that are today separated but converging in a very big way, and everything is being pushed out into IP, which to make all those workflows a lot more agile. We believe that's a trend that's very strong, that is being basically brought about by the need of the broadcasters and the people that play in television to be a lot more efficient.
Agility clearly is something that our industry is finally embracing through the inertia of the linear days. Lou, what makes you excited when you look at our industry?
You know, I mean, so many things that are exciting about IP video. I think what's really encouraging to me is to see how sort of the market is starting to recognize and appreciate this fracturing of audiences and all the different sort of distribution experiences, whether it's traditional TV or mobile or smart tablets or connected TV, that there are behavioral experiences that are going on across all these sort of different devices in understanding, right, the engagement patterns of the end user, and that this is a ubiquitous world. It's not just one sort of singular outlet, but really sort of an integrated, homogeneous experience that broadcasters and content owners are understanding and appreciating the importance of data and understanding the end user sort of activity and how they're consuming content.
Yeah, I agree. Simon, you guys have been doing some innovative stuff. What makes you excited? What do you look at and say, wow, that's cool?
Well, actually, I must sort of just continuing on along the comments from here. I actually think that there's so much exciting innovation that we can talk about. I actually think that what we will have to see in the next wave is how do we simplify all of this for the customers. I think there's so many things to talk about: 8K, VR, spatial audio, new monetization models, and I actually think that the challenge for the industry is how do we get all of this across in a way that's simple for the end user? Because I don't think that end users are ready to consume all of the innovation that's out there right now, to be honest.
Peter, we're ahead of the game, maybe. What makes you excited?
Quite a lot of things make me excited, actually. But specifically about broadcast, I think it's definitely about people working together now more than ever before. So it's about collaboration between people making content, people delivering content, and really trying to look at things end to end to get efficiency and to keep the agility there to deliver what the consumers want and to educate them about what's available.
Yeah, I agree. When they say about consumer power, the consumer being in charge, not only are they in charge, they're prepared to use their wallets to make us deliver it. Gabby, what do you see as the exciting trend in the broadcast space?
Generally I agree with a lot of the comments we're hearing here. For us, it's been moments of focus in certain areas, and for these days it's really about scale. A lot of the end-to-end stuff has got to come together, but ultimately it's about scale and quality of delivery. We spend a lot of time thinking about that. Most recently, when we focus our time, it's around technologies like LTE broadcast that with the rise of linear and more consumers participating and viewing linear services, we think that's one of the problem areas we want to solve. And LT broadcast is truly exciting, especially as it emerges in specific regions, right, where sporting content and as we go through, presidencies and all that stuff, it's driving a lot of live events, live content. We think there's a lot to be done around broadcast quality.
I'm amazed by the fact that TV has gone from this everybody sits in one room experience to this. I'm just doing my own thing. I'm in control of my own TV destiny. I have a 11-year-old who I'm incredibly happy with and love and cherish, and he doesn't watch television. He doesn't watch television. I say things like, "What's on TV?" He goes, "Yeah, iPad." Just hand me the iPad. Some things work. Some things just feel right. The iPad. I look around these halls and occasionally see technologies that, on paper, they sound really, really good, and nothing happens. And I'll use the words 3D as an example. Sorry if you're into 3D. Sure. But are there things when you look out in this world you think that is almost there? It's just maybe a few years out. VR. I mean, do you look at VR and think yes or maybe or one day?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, it's definitely a maybe. I mean, you brought out 3D, and I think 3D was difficult to adopt because it had a barrier to adoption, no. And I'm not really talking about the entire production workflow because that was a barrier to adoption, but you were asking the consumer then to put on a pair of glasses. Here you have an additional barrier of adoption. You're asking people to embrace content in a very different way than they're embracing it today. And in addition to that, you have extra hardware and software that they would need to embrace and put into the living room in one way, shape, or form. So it's an even higher barrier to adoption. So it's definitely a maybe. And we haven't even started looking at what the business models could look like. Yeah.
Yeah, the business models are almost require as much innovation as the technology. When you look at the technology landscape, do you think business model first, technology first?
You're looking at me, so
I'm looking at you.
From a technology and innovation perspective, I'm in the minority camp because I'm always sort of looking at it from sort of what's the business model first, how do we monetize the content, and then secondarily, what's the technology, right, to deliver sort of a particular experience. I think VR, I think there's a lot of opportunity around VR. I think there's some limiting factors, right? I think content is really challenging to produce, for a VR experience. I think you have the tethered versus untethered sort of experience. So you have the Oculus versus, the Samsungs and the other, consumer electronics companies that are producing goggles that can take your smartphone and create, sort of a 360-degree view, much like an IMAX experience, which everyone questioned whether or not people would watch films, right, on their smartphone device. But when you can put it into a VR-like goggle and get that type of experience, I think VR has a lot of legs. Again, monetization, first.
Still maybe
We're still trying to figure out sort of how we pay for those things, but I think the experience will drive that innovation.
Simon, you make an interesting point about this marrying between the broadcast industry, which was always, we're going to pump out the signal, it's a television, to a world now where the device is so diverse. I mean, I can't even count the number of formats and potential endpoints a viewer can watch content on. Are we now at a stage where the broadcast industry just has to talk to the CE industry and get a marriage going?
That's a good question. I do, as I said last time, I do think we need to see some sort of more standardization and more simplification. I think there's a little bit too much fragmentation out there. That's something that all the guys that we're powering as Extreme, as an online video platform, we're powering a lot of complexity in terms of formats and DRM and all of that, and they need all these different formats because the device fragmentation is so big. So yeah, I do think there's a huge potential for more streamlining, and we will see that over the next couple of years.
Is more formats good or more formats bad? Is that a good thing for the consumer and a bad for the industry, or the other way around?
But the thing is, we might see that being simplified over the coming years, and people conforming to Dash and sort of new standards that are more broader. At the same time, we were just talking about VR here, right? That's not going to be supported by the current standards, right? So, at the same time, the industry is getting ahead of itself, and there'll be new complex formats introduced. So it's a bit, yeah. I think it's naive to think that there'll be one format to rule them all, right? So there would be more context for him.
I love this panel one because I get to ask you guys really hard questions. Really hard questions. I sit around thinking of, Peter, the question I've got for you is just ridiculously hard, right? Is it a good, should one company win? Now, I'll explain that. If one company dominates a market, let's just say all the VR headsets for Samsung, or all of the, I don't know, social TV interfaces for Facebooks, and that now became the standard. Does that make it easier and better for us? IP won. There's no token ring anymore, right? There's just no token ring. IP won. Should there be a winner? Should there be a de facto leader in every one of these emerging markets?
That is a very, very good question.
It's an
Actually.
awful question.
And it's a good question. And I think actually what we're seeing so far is the opposite of that. We're seeing more and more fragmentation, to be honest. We're seeing people consume content on more devices, more different times, in more different formats. Maybe some consolidation on the content, the ownership of content supply a little bit. Definitely some power, some market power in the consumer electronics space. There's a few big players there that have a lot. But certainly if you look at our industry as a whole, there are a lot of companies here, for example, an awful lot. And we just see more and more. We see more and more deviation. We see content owners, broadcasters having to reach their audience, deliver to more and more different places all of the time, often for only tiny incremental revenues. So really, it drives the whole challenge back to optimizing, simplifying, streamlining, just trying to make sure that as you try and get more and more of these opportunities online, you're just not growing your costs linearly at the same time. So I don't think it'll come down to one winner in the end.
But you don't want there to be one winner. Is it healthy for us to have all this multiple operating systems and devices and platforms and standards? Is it a standard? Is it not a standard? Is that a healthy, vibrant ecosystem? Or would you want, as technology companies, it's all Apple, it all works?
I think competition drives innovation. So I think if it did come down to one company, maybe with the end of innovation. So I'm not sure it's a good idea.
I agree. It's very much, you want to keep the vibrancy going, push the limits. There's no one company can really pull it together, right? So we do need to have this this continued vibrancy and building the technology platforms that enable a lot of rich use cases that are out there. That's from a technical perspective. From a consumer perspective, I think a lot of folks will agree. There's a lot of options out there. It's creating a lot of complexity for users to understand where they should go to, for what content. I feel horrible about it because we're part of that system and we haven't been solving that elegantly. Whether I go to Netflix, whether I go to my aggregated TV service provider, we know that there's a lot of OTT services popping up. The problem then becomes where's the opportunity in that? Is it for Netflix to expand their portfolio? What leap do they take next? Is it for the aggregators to become essentially the new aggregator and pull more content in that's a lot less about the traditional sources and more about social media content all coming through, doing their part as an aggregator. So we do think that vibrancy around the technology platforms are really pushing the limits on capabilities, but I guess every so often we've got to step back and think about the consumer perspective.
Just an open question to all you guys. Between you have hundreds of customers. When you talk to those customers, who are the ones that are driving innovation? And I might say who. Is it the sports broadcasters? Is it the telcos? Is it the small regional operators? Is it OTT? Is it state broadcasters, which I'm going to say in a joking way? Who is driving the next wave of innovation?
Well, I can kick it off, I guess, if you like. I think you're seeing innovation from all of them. You're seeing innovation from the content providers. You're seeing innovation from the aggregators. You're seeing innovation from the distributors. If you look at, for example, one of the companies that we work with is iFlix out in Asia. And if you look at the service itself is actually very simple. So I'm not talking about feature innovation. But the entire purpose of the service, or one of the purposes of the service, is to combat the phenomenon of piracy out in the Asian market. Because unlike many other markets, or the European market or the US market, piracy in Asia is actually paid. People go out and they will spend $3, $4, $5 on a pirated DVD. There's tons and tons of shops out in the streets of Malaysia, Philippines, where you can buy pirated DVDs. So by putting out a very good OTT service, basically, that gives you quality experience at a price that competes with the price points of piracy, they're able then to actually start reversing some of those trends. So that's innovation from, if you will, from based by the market need and based by. And the same thing, I mean, if you look at what Comcast is doing with the watchable service, it's again a distributor trying to reinvent themselves in a little bit.
But the ironic, you mentioned Comcast. I don't know what it's like in the US, but cable operators in Europe, maybe not the most forward-thinking and innovative, but in this instance, you're name-checking Comcast as an innovator.
Well, listen, I think that television is fundamentally changing. The entire proposition and the entire ecosystem is changing, and everybody's trying to basically come up with the best solution towards out to the consumer. And it's being changed by the consumer experience. No? In the future, you know, there will not be distributors versus content providers, and even companies like ours, maybe 5 years from now, we might not meet here at NAB. You know, we might be different type of companies altogether. So I do think that even in the ones that have been traditionally dominant in the TV industry, like the cable operators, the distributors, they have a need to innovate, and they have a need to reinvent themselves in one way, shape, or form.
So it's innovation through necessity, yeah? Name?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Our company, frankly, principally serves local broadcasters throughout the country. These are the local affiliates, the ABC, CBS, and NBC affiliates in many of the local markets throughout the U.S. So when you say, are we innovating or are they innovating? I think there's innovation across the value chain. I think the local broadcasters are innovating around news and production and gaining lots of efficiency, right, within their back office. At the same time, we're trying to drive efficiency and innovation for digital distribution. So they lean on us to move that same video content that's available free to air over digital distribution platforms, whether it's the desktop, mobile, connected TV, and other sort of IP connected devices. So they can't innovate fast enough on the digital distribution side of the value chain, and that's where we sort of help them and do a lot of the heavy lifting. But I would say they would argue they're innovating, you know, in their core operation, just around news and and the way they produce content in a more sort of efficient manner.
Okay.
Yeah. I might add to that, and I think Karen mentioned an earlier point, and I think that I think the broadcasters, the operators, and they have to be careful about being very focused on innovation, to be honest, because sort of if you think of innovation as being new technology, new features, because I think you can very easily put a lot more down the throat of consumers that they actually want or need. I think Netflix is a great example of someone who are so focused on doing very few things, but doing them extremely well. They're really simplifying the world of SVOD, right? It's a very simple proposition, and it just works every single time, right? It's not a complex product. It's not a complex monetization model. They don't have TVOD, they don't have AVOD, they don't have pay-per-view, they don't have live. It's SVOD. $10 a month, whatever it is. You know, it's very simple. So I really think that innovation is great sort of on our side of the industry, and we should to some extent push some of the new formats, new VR, all of that. But I think that if you look at the players who do really well in the market, it's not necessarily those who innovate the most in terms of constantly coming up with new features, constantly coming on new devices that no one thought of, and so success is not necessarily the same as rapid innovation, is what I'm trying to say. So I think when you look at the broadcasters, operators, content owners, the ones who will be the winners are the ones who can present something valuable and simple. And I think the real innovation that we still need to see is not about a new format or a new device. It's going to be about monetization, because I still think there's in this industry, when you talk about OTT, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's TV everywhere, OTT, or it's standalone, SVOD, TVOD, whatever it is, I don't think the industry has really cracked how do we monetize this yet, right? The broadcasters haven't. Netflix has probably, how many TVOD models can you mention out there who makes a healthy margin, right? How many TVOD players makes a margin, right? No one does.
So we have,
So I think the innovation needs to be on the monetization side first and foremost over the next couple of years.
You made a point, which I know you didn't see. We had a panel yesterday where one of the very bright people said the cable satellite market was this nice regular payment every month, nice long contracts, and the reality today is we're saying to that money stream, that's going away a little bit with cord cutting, a little bit, and now you're going to have to take $10 a month, maybe, if they like you, and if Game of Cards, House of Thrones is on, and replace all of that nice cable satellite revenue with something that's very unknown, and but by the way, you have to build it from scratch, or rent it, or find someone else who's smart enough to do it. And that, you're right, but that question, how do we answer that question to an industry that's been forced to change after 60 years? I can't change after only 40-something years. A six-year industry that's been told that model is going away, now find something new. What do we do?
Well, I think the cable guys have been doing an extraordinary job of positioning themselves for this moment in time, right? When there's more margin compression around bundling and content, right, and more margin for IP delivery. I mean, Comcast for years has been investing into building out their IP framework, and if you look over the last 15 years, the margins for just broadband connectivity from Comcast has continued to increase, while the margin for bundling and reselling content and retrans fees has continued to sort of compress. So I think the cable guys and the satellite guys have been positioning themselves around sort of broadband connected TV.
I got another thing you said, which I very interesting point about this notion of will the companies that we see today actually be the same guys as tomorrow. So I have a friend who's a big fan of wrestling. She likes wrestling.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
And now the wrestling chaps have their own channel, WWE, OTT, something, and it makes money. And it launched like a year ago. Because all over the world, there's like these millions of little pockets of wrestling fans. And I think that is innovation. That this brand has worked out, that they can do it themselves and they can monetize it. Is that going to be the future, where we're going to find these little pockets of hardcore, passionate consumers who are prepared to pay for their passion?
I think there's a very good chance that is what's going to happen, actually. I mean, we've seen that with a few of our customers, Ride TV being one of them. You're really focusing down on a really definable audience, in their case, sort of the equine world, and they're able to identify them with them in a way that the larger players would really struggle to, and that allows them to have a business model where they can get much higher sort of CPMs on each ad that they sell, because they know that it's going to just the right person at the right point in time. And I think for me, a lot of innovation comes from looking at where the core competences lie in different teams, in different companies. And yes, our industries, I wouldn't say it's done nothing for 60 years, but we've kind of had the same business model for 60 years. Yes, technology's changed, but behind the scenes, it's kind of worked roughly the same kind of way. And I think the big shift really now is that technology continues to move, but that technology is allowing the business model to move as well for the first time. And what was in the past for many broadcasters and MSOs and so on, a really sacrosanct, predictable revenue stream becomes a lot more fickle, a lot more bursty, a lot more focused around the content they have at that point in time, potentially. So that's on the consumer side, that's what's happening, and that means that on the back end, they've got to be much more reliant on partners who can provide them with some agility, and that can be things like cloud, and it can be just simple outsourcing as well.
Can it be things like the word I see a lot on stands this year, analytics, big data? It sounds sexy, it sounds great. Is analytics and big data, are broadcasters learning the skills of Google to really dig into the lives of their subscribers? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Will it happen? Will somebody wave the flag of privacy and say stop? Is big data analytics sexy and hot? Someone take it, because I honestly don't know.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think it's critical for broadcasters to understand, right, who their consumers are, right? And the only way they're going to understand is to start managing subscriber data and really understanding what the consumer behavior is I guess broadcasters never knew who their customer was.
We had Bob and all those things. They were clearly very accurate, weren't they?
You're right. So yeah, we had Nielsen data, we had sampling data. I mean, now we have real first-party data, right? So broadcasters are sort of entering sort of a new paradigm where they understand who's consuming their content, and so there's a big sort of shift and focus around big data and subscriber management. And for broadcasters and entertainment companies like WWE, who never knew who their subscribers were, they delivered their content through USA Networks, NBC sort of owned the subscriber relationship. Now when they go over the top and they go direct to consumer, understanding sort of subscriber data and understanding sort of big data and how the audiences are consuming content across all the different sort of OTT devices becomes absolutely critical.
Isn't it a bit creepy? Having when you're on the internet and then suddenly you've looked at a sofa in IKEA maybe a month ago and then suddenly everything is sofas. And you start feeling a little bit odd about being on the internet. Do we want television to be like the internet, where they know everything about me and my love of sofas and IKEA? Is that the future of TV? Is that the future of television? That we become a subscriber equation on an algorithm that serves up adverts and content?
Well, at the end of the day, it's going to be the consumer having some perception of what the trade-off is, right? And at the end, if there is an end result which is a better product for me and a better offering that ties more personally to what I'm interested in, and there's a little bit of a mass data sort of collection and analytics that's leading towards that, I think they're willing to participate. In a lot of ways, Twitter and Facebook, you're putting that data out there anyways, and so in this case, is it wrong to pull some of the data back and aggregate it and create patterns around it? And I think that's the world today. I think there's the access to that information is a lot more readily available. We have a lot more mechanisms to collect it. There's definitely the policies around privacy and all that. That's that area we need to.
It's a regional thing. I mean, in Europe, the laws change. You got a lot of customers in Northern Europe, in particular. Are they more concerned about privacy and analytics, or less concerned?
I haven't seen sort of any polls or stats around that, but my personal perception is that people are fairly open to. I don't think there's a. Google has, in most countries around the world, in the Nordics as well, they have the lion's share of the market for search, and people are very comfortable with that. I don't think people are afraid of sharing their data or afraid of Facebook and the big data behind that. And so I think the consumers are comfortable with it. I think that the challenge is that only very, very, very few players have really been able to do it well and monetize it well and get that trust from people, and that is probably Facebook and Google, probably the two ones who've sort of cracked it so far. When you talk about broadcasters, operators, they don't have the 2,000 data scientists that Google have, right? So how do they tap into this, right? Because sure, they can serve ads, they can use Google's ad insertion engines, but they're basically just passing on the value to Google, right? So how does the operators and the broadcasters tap into the value here, and because they don't have these resources, they don't know, they haven't even been managing, many of them, like broadcasters, haven't even been managing customers before, let alone managing data, right? So that I think is still a big question mark in industry. How do we move that value? Because the value of big data and targeted advertising is so so concentrated around Facebook and Google and very few other players, right? So, and the value of broadcast one-to-many advertising is diminishing, right? So, how do you move from this? How do you make that move and actually get some value for the other players in the value chain? I don't see that there is a very good answer to that at the moment.
I agree. I think it does seem, and this show is a great example, that as an industry, we're becoming more of an IT industry in many ways, a software-centric industry. I'm not going to ever try to say that the creatives, the pure content, the directors, the artists, the actors, aren't the fundamental piece that we need. But it seems that that wrap needs to be driven by data and IT-based processes. Again, more about your customers. When you speak to your customers, and there's a new project or there's a new OTT launch, are the questions around the future, what do we do in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, are they always on the table at the meetings? Are they actually thinking about the long tail, or is it just launch it before Netflix turn up? Which was a phrase I heard last year a lot, less so this year. Is innovation at the forefront from the customer? And long-term innovation, long-term planning, is it there?
Yes, I do think so. I mean, you said it yourself. This is an industry that is 60 years old, and to an extent was very well organized. And there wasn't really any need to understand really what the customer likes individually, because you're pushing out basically all these shows, and you're getting their money in return. No? But then, as soon as the internet became the de facto platform for distributing content, then you need to understand. I mean, people, particularly the younger generations, basically that are embracing OTT, you need to understand what is it that they like, and they might be very diverse in what they like. You know, not everybody likes sports, not everybody likes a particular part of particular types of shows. I have an 18-year-old daughter that is fascinated by horror movies, for example. She could watch it 24/7. So how do you then encapsulate that experience, and how do you understand what the consumer really wants?
But are your operator customers actually thinking like that? You're thinking like that, but are they thinking like that? I look at services that are in the UK that are very, very popular, and the innovation is incremental, but you don't always get the sense that they've got a long-term vision. It always seems reactionary to something that's happened. I'm not sure if there's like a vision. I'll give an example. So the BBC is the most well-funded R&D broadcast group in the UK.
Yeah.
And they talk about things like object-based broadcasting. Amazing stuff. And they do demos from HDR testing years back and 4K. But it always felt like they were throwing out into the market and they had this vision. But I look at other broadcasts and I think, you're only doing this because somebody else did it. I'm just trying to work out if innovation is baked in and on the table, or if it's just, oh my God, what do we do? Those guys have launched that thing. I don't know. You guys are close to the customers. What's your feeling?
My customers are principally local broadcasters, and so if you look in the US, I mean, local broadcasters are under siege, right? The networks are trying to go over the top, right? They're competing against other local networks in their own market. You know, to look around, I mean, the networks are trying to go direct to consumer and are pulling out premium programming that used to be made available under sort of their network and carriage agreements. So it's obvious that if the local broadcaster doesn't innovate quickly to stay ahead of their peers locally and stay ahead of this sort of natural sort of churn that they're going to realize if the networks go direct to consumer, they're out of business. Yeah. So my guys are, my customers are looking to me to innovate all the time. If I'm not innovating, then they're going to be looking at another service provider, to help them in their distribution strategy. But they're always looking to innovate, especially sort of in the local markets, where they compete every day against other broadcasters.
And how incumbent is it on the technology supplier to give not only just the bits and the bytes and the hardware, but also some of that vision? Are we required to have some of that vision and pass that on to our customers?
Absolutely. I mean, as a service provider, it's incumbent upon us to stay ahead of the curve. I mean, their business, at least as it relates to local broadcasters, their business is to produce news and to do it efficiently to the margin. And that's what they focus on all day. And they outsource, right, other sort of technology and other digital distribution to vendors such as us, because we're going to innovate all the time. We're going to think about ways to incorporate, voice attendant into a native mobile application. So when someone says, "What's the news?" I can have someone sort of recite sort of the local news. And they're thinking about these things, but they're never going to implement. So they look to the service provider to sort of bring strategies, and ideas to them so that they can remain relevant and ahead of the curve.
And I think just to add to that, I think we definitely bring ideas and innovation, but what we also bring as vendors typically is with global deployments and global customer bases, we bring knowledge from what are they doing in the other markets, and I think that's what we're offering. our customers will come to us and say, this is what we think the strategy should be. Can you help? Can you be the sounding board? What are other guys doing? You know, absolutely, it's our role to help them and guide them. And I think that what is critical for you know, yes, you can do a 3-4 year strategy, and then that's hard to do because everything's so uncertain, even on a 1 to 2 year horizon. But you have to have a longer term plan. So I think the key here for success is not to spend a year on figuring out what the 3 to 4 year plan is, you know, but to have a 3 or 4 year plan that you believe in, but then also be very, very quick at pivoting, right? So you cannot, you know, if you made a mistake, if you got on the wrong device, and you spent a lot of money on it, or you shouldn't have done SVOD, you should have done pay-per-view, or, you know, suck it up, just, you know, pivot, change, right? You can't get stuck in your decisions. You can't try to protect an investment you've done in the past, because if it wasn't the right, then you got to move on. Otherwise, you're. I mean, so I think that the ability for, and that's tough for broadcasters, for instance, right? You said it, like 60 years of the same monetization model, same technologies, and so that's hard to sort of just year after year to change the model rapidly. But there is a certain need for that.
We're kind of blessed, I guess. We're in a software era. The days when you spent 10 million on a load of kit and then realised, yeah, that's just not going to work. Those are career-defining moments. In the software world, in the cloud world, in the defined network world, is agility and innovation much easier than, say, 10 years ago? Are we at an innovation inflection point?
We absolutely should be. And the challenge that we face as providers is to help push that mindset out across all of the people within our customers and the wider market. And I think what you were mentioning a second ago, the idea of trying something, failing fast, moving on, is absolutely where we need to be. I mean, the idea of setting in stone today a 3-year development plan which you're going to absolutely stick to, I think is virtually impossible. I think you've got to be agile. You've got to try and continue to look for small opportunities which you think you can grow, try them, see if you can grow them, move on. All the time trying to keep your back end as efficient as possible, so that you're not just burning cash the whole time. So yeah, it's a mindset change, I think.
I agree. It's ultimately, you know, operators have traditionally had a certain process and model of developing and adding value to their services. That, I mean, it's clear they're at a point, an inflection point, where they have to make a more fundamental shift in the way they operate, and that is very much a software-defined sort of strategy, redefining their head end, redefining their middleware, sort of like, you know, the entire stack, and being able to orchestrate changes much faster, right? So you've got all these new components and capabilities and a lot of product innovation vertically inside of their stack. The question is, okay, how do you take advantage of that very, very quickly and roll those changes out? And the operating model behind those changes. What does that mean for their operations group, et cetera, to scale and continue to deliver services? That is it's a very tough thing for an operator to make that transition, right? You've got years of practices, you know, groups and development practices and integration practices all built out. Everyone knows how an operator runs. That fundamental shift to a software world, you know, clearly Google, Amazon, they're defining what that means. They're essentially creating products, but they're defining what it means to have that cultural shift. I think that's truly where the inflection becomes a reality for the operators. And I think in a lot of ways they're going to make journey steps towards that. It's going to take them some time, but they'll make journey steps towards that. And that will ultimately reset their agenda, help them to really achieve those waves of innovation they're seeking.
I'm always amazed when I look at the technology landscape and look at the bookseller that's now the world's largest cloud, that's an OTT provider. The project by some guys at the university just to send a few messages now has 1 billion users. I almost can't get my head around it sometimes. So sometimes I sit down with friends and I drink, we try to make random predictions, which, you know, sometimes you get them right. Like we said, phones would be this big and they're now this big. So because you're all experts, and this is the last panel at NAB, I'd love for you to make a random prediction. And there's no one here. No one will know. You know, just a few guys on some really white sofas talking about technology. I'd love you to make just one prediction. You can be easy. You can say like 4K is going to be hot, which is easy. Or you can go really outlandish. I'd like you each to just make one prediction that you think, you know, might stand the test of time. And we'll go left to right. Here we go.
Prediction for 2017 or beyond?
Whatever
or?
you can say for 1 year, for 2 years, for 5 years, for 10 years. Your dime, you pick it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what we believe is going to happen over the next year, and I'll let these guys handle the really long-term one.
Well, yeah, just make it harder as you go along.
No, I think you know, to summarize a little bit all the topics that we're talking about here, I think that television is becoming a very fragmented experience. It's become a very individual experience, and it's basically it's the world of the internet. And in the world of the internet, you have infinite shelf life, and you have infinite possibilities to mix and match content in individualized both consumption patterns and individualized experiences. So I think there'll be a lot more niche services basically coming out. A lot of trial and error about programs, you know, professional, semi-professional programs coming out to entertain, try to find the niches basically to monetize.
So I'm going to paraphrase. Your Nostradamus-like insight is niche is going to be hot. Niche is going to be where the lots of growth and momentum is going to appear.
Well, there'll be momentum. We'll have to see whether it's growth, but there'll be momentum. Yeah.
That's a safe prediction, but I think you're going to be right personally. Lou.
I think augmented reality.
Augmented reality.
Yeah, I think the idea that your phone becomes sort of a device that can be used for augmented experiences, meaning like the promise of virtual reality and the idea of being able to take your phone and snap into goggles and have experiences that are far beyond what you would typically experience in day-to-day life is going to become a reality. And it's going. I think the promise of artificial and augmented reality.
Give a time frame. When will it, we'll be walking around here, NAB, and we're like,
20
hi, how are you? When will it be?
I think in 2020, you'll see. By 2020, next 4 years.
3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I think you'll be able to walk around with your smartphone inside some type of consumer electronic, whether it's goggles, that you can walk from booth to booth, much like you would in a museum. You walk up to the Mona Lisa and you can have sort of a full sort of printout and understanding.
So basically,
of like
Lou's saying that his booth is like the Mona Lisa, but we're gonna, okay. So paraphrasing, 3 years, AR will be a functioning, monetized experience.
always monetized.
Okay, always monetized. Simon.
Right. You pick mine. I was gonna say, yeah, augmented reality. I think as you say, no one's sitting. Or you don't have much viewership in the living room anymore, right? Well, you do, but it's not on the same screen. They have different screens, right? And yeah, I think the next step is not having an iPad in your hand, but having something that is either built in or in your glasses or whatever it is. It's probably not a big box that you have on your head.
Yeah.
I think that's when you look 10 years from now, when you look back, they're going to laugh about people running around with big boxes on their foreheads. So something smarter than that, but the same function. But I think so that is basically taking it to the 100% one-on-one personalized experience, right?
Yeah.
In terms of a immersive content experience.
So TV is for you, not
Yeah.
just you're watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
But having said that, I think maybe to sort of add another prediction to that one, I think the monetization models, which we've been talking about a lot, I think they will become. I think the one size fits all monetization models are going to be dead 5 years from now. I don't think you'll have Netflix in Denmark $10 per month or Amazon Prime in the US $15 a month. I don't think you'll have that. I think as part of that complete personalization of the experience, I think you'll have personalized offerings as well.
The personalized bundle.
Personalized bundles, and there's no salesman that'll call you up and say, I've thought about it, I think you should have this bundle, right? No, you'll just, all the data we talked about, the big data, they will know this guy likes Transparent, he likes House of Cards, he likes Vikings, and he watches a few movies as well. This is going to be the package, and it's sort of, it's a combination of things from Disney, from Netflix, this is the monetization model that fits this guy's wallet and his preferences, right?
Oh, I'm in favour of that. I think it's happening now. but in a weird kind of way, it's happening now. Go on.
I mean, this just gets harder as we move along.
It's the
to some
hardest.
extent.
It's just the hardest question
I'm
ever.
not sure I like being compared to a museum exhibit on the stand, but never mind. No, for me, it's about collaboration. I think as an industry, the pressure that we face from the rest of the world, the fact that we're not in a walled garden anymore, the fact that we're all having to compete with everybody and everybody, means that there has to be an awful lot more collaboration between, vertically across our industry. And I think that's really what's going to be the big change, that people are going to either work together really well and understand where the core competences are and exploit those as best as possible, or they're probably not going to go very far. Probably what's going to happen.
Okay. Gavi, what's your prediction? You've only got a couple of minutes.
Last but not least is, well, I mean,
you can go as wild as you like, all right?
Well, here's the thing. I don't have very much a wild. I think I'm very much in the line of thinking that we were just talking about, which is there's a little bit of niche that's coming out. That it's really a maturity that's happened in the retail sector and other sectors, and how we react to that. There's a lot of commodity type products out there, and there's a lot of niche products. And ultimately, I would love to see the development of marketplaces where the content is available. We're living in a digital age. We should act like we're living in a digital age. Content should never be restricted from a service. If there's an audience, you should be able to get to it, and you should be able to arrange the transaction on the fly and deliver to that consumer. They should not have to look.
That would be wonderful.
And so I'd love to see that come together in the next.
Okay, so we have some experts here. Any questions from the audience? And as it's the last session, I'm offering beer and wine for anyone who asks a question. Not beer and wine, beer or wine, and only red wine, and only American beer. But any questions? Yes. I own that man a beer already as well, so yeah, I do.
So with every part of the industry really innovating, the content providers, the delivery system, do you think that it's the sales platform for TV that's not really up to the times to really fully monetize the OTT solution?
That's an interesting. I'm going to paraphrase for the crowd. So the question was, is it the front end? Is it the marketplace that's failing to get to the monetization part? Is that a fair way of saying it? Okay. The storefront, the goods are there, the shelving's working, but we're just not selling it right.
Well, I mean, I think part of the problem is that there's a wealth of content. And how do you make it visible? How do you make it that's always been the dilemma with in terms of recommendation. No, how do you actually get a good recommended experience for that gives you really what something that you would like to want to watch. So there's definitely room for innovation in that space.
Is recommendation good? Is it working? Is it there yet? It's not as good as Google is. It's like, I want this and it appears. It's like, I want this. Would you like to watch House of Cards? No, I'm okay. It's not quite there yet, is it really?
No. Personally, sort of answering that question, I think you're absolutely right. I think the problem with recommendations today is, we've got lots of great recommendation engine partners, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the problems is that it's recommending more of the same, right? And I've just watched House of Cards. Maybe I don't want to watch another drama, American political drama. Maybe I actually want to watch something, a sports show now. Or it's very hard to predict, and then people try with moods and sort of time of day.
There's definitely room. There's room to grow.
Absolutely.
Okay, we've got time for one more question and more beer. Anyone? I see. I'm prepared to go to vodka. Yes. Russian vodka, just so you know.
Thanks. The recommendations and personalisation, I think we've touched on that topic quite a few times, but from where we see it, it all comes down to who owns the information and how much information you can have to personalise. And there's a big difference between, well, let's say an operator might have information on their customer versus a broadcaster. And I have to say broadcasters are kind of deficit in some ways of how much they can ever really know about their customer, apart from perhaps their history. How do you see broadcasters as getting more information about that customer?
We ran out of time. I honestly, no. It's a great question. It's actually a really great question. It's a fundamental question that if you can answer, you can make an absolute fortune. We literally just ran out of time. But they're all here, lurking just in this area after you're off. We're grabbing you to ask that question again. I'm going to say thank you to our panelists. I'm really sorry. And it's Dilly's fault. She told me I ran out of time. Miguel Silva from Viamond, Lou Schwartz from Frankly, Simon Hosbrough from Extreme, Peter Elridge from Globecast, and Kavi Maharaj from Quick Play. Thank you.